Picture this. It's the 1990s, you're a Sony executive who just got a call from Nintendo, saying that they are no longer interested in partnering to make a new game console. What do you do? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You still go ahead and make that console and have it go on to be one of the most successful game consoles of all time! PlayStation. It's been one of the three major competitors pretty much since it first came out. It's like one day it was just Nintendo and Sega, and then the next it was just... If Nintendo's seen as the company to prove that 3D was the next major step in gaming, then Sony's the one that perfected the genre. The PlayStation always screamed, "This ain't your grandma's console." It was mysterious, it was edgy, and it was advertised to be like that.
Nutcracker.
When a PlayStation ad came on, it wasn't no baby ka-ding coin sound. Nah, it was this hip and cool gong sound. This wasn't for kids like you, this was for adults. Cheat on your wife with these polygons. Who cares when you're dealing with PlayStation? Some of the greatest games of all time were originally released as PlayStation exclusives. Like today you can play Final Fantasy VII on almost anything that has a screen, but back then it was either you buy a PS1 or you don't get to play the cool anime game. Looking back, it's actually crazy just how many game series had their start on the PlayStation. Obviously we have games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, but also games like the Persona series, Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Grand Theft Auto, Metal Gear Solid, Pac-Man World, Parappa the Rapper, Tekken, Croc! One moment Yoshi's looking like this, and then he's like this. Be thankful that deal with Nintendo fell through. After talking about how all these big games started out on the PS1, you might be wondering, what's so special about the PlayStation compared to the Nintendo? Well, that would be one major thing. Discs. For the longest time, games looked like this when you took them out of the box. What am I supposed to do with this? Put it in a toaster? But then Sony came waltzing in and said, "Hey, that shit's lame," and then slammed on the table a glorified pizza cutter. Compared to cartridges, Compared to a cartridge, a disc can hold way more data and information on it. Yeah, this flat donut can hold more than this gray brick. Now, Sony wasn't the first to use discs, however. That would be the CDI. Okay, well, even that isn't really true. Technically, the first game console to use discs was the NEC PC Engine CD-ROM 2 unit.
What kind of title is that?
But do you know how insane you sound when you say that? Well, actually, Batman, the CDI wasn't the first game console to use discs. It was actually the NEC CD Engine ROM 2 unit. But enough about that. Let's finally start talking about the things people like about this console. When talking about the PS1's graphics, you kind of have to be careful with what you say, because while I see that it's trying very hard to look nice, it's just plain ugly! This is the era of games where trying to make realistic humans was like putting makeup on for the first time. It's just not gonna look good. And look, I'm aware that every other console at this time also had super low poly counts. Like I can literally count the triangles on Mario's nose. But for Pete's sake! You know, cartoon characters they had down pat. Well, a little odd, I can still look at this all day. But then you start talking about getting realistic, and then you end up with this. The PS1 sacrificed smoother graphics for better textures, so a lot of the time while you might have fine textures, when you try to put them on a model you just end up with that. But hey, this is 1994, so graphics won't matter for another 6 years. So let's just focus on the controls instead.
The controls.
Okay, so the controls had one major flaw. There were no control sticks. So if you wanted to play in that fabled third dimension, well, I hope you enjoyed those thumbs, because you're not going to be using those for a while afterwards. Eventually, Sony heard everyone's complaints and released a modified version of their controller, which they called the DualShock. So finally, we can actually play the games comfortably. And, well, how do they play?
The gameplay.
Around this time in gaming, there was a really common and controversial way that games would allow you to play them, and that way was what we called tank controls. Some people hate it, others like it, and I don't really have an opinion on it. I just simply haven't played enough games with them to even form an opinion. The only game I've played in recent times with tank controls was Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, but I can't even get past the first level in that game. But controls aside, the games were actually pretty good. While needlessly hard in some places, a lot of great games came out of the PlayStation. You know, there's just something special about PlayStation 1 games. I mean, even the covers had this look to them. Like, a lot of them were just original artwork, which is totally fine, and hey, it looks great. But there were also these ones that opted to use 3D models for the covers instead. And I mean, sometimes it works, and other times it's, jarring, to say the least. They are very much a product of their time, and that's not a bad thing. I like how ugly these games look. However, speaking of ugly,
Green.
Every game company has got this thing where any mildly good game will get a re-release with a spruced up case and a cheaper price tag. A lot of those covers vary in quality. Usually it's just a solid color with some text, but you know, as long as it's a visually appealing color, that's fine. For instance, the GameCube's got yellow, which that works especially well with Mario Sunshine, so it gets a pass. And then Xbox had their version of that, which they called Platinum Hits. Oh, sorry. Platinum Family Hits. And then we have the PlayStation 1. What color do you think they chose?
Did they choose A, velvet red, B, navy blue?
It was green! I'm not exactly sure why they chose green, but then to make matters worse, they put red text like it's f***ing Christmas time!
Merry Christmas.
Thankfully, it only took them to the PS2 to fix that issue, and they moved to a much better velvet red. It's still not perfect, but it's better than green. Well, anyway, moving on. There's one more thing I'd like to talk about before I run out of things to say about the PS1, and that's the aesthetic of it. The PS1 unfortunately came out before menus were really a thing for consoles. Well, at least stylized menus. There is a PlayStation menu, but, well, it's just... But hey, look at all your save data! Come on, give me a break, I'm pulling at straws. Okay, even though the menu's boring, there is one thing that was always super cool. The PlayStation intro. The endless white abyss with the orange diamond and two triangles inside that then fades to black with the PlayStation logo. It all feels foreign, it's strange, it's almost like it's from another planet. And most importantly, it set the mood for almost every game on the damn thing. Now, it ain't no PS2 startup, but it's what came before it. It's the inspiration for the hauntingly beautiful whirlwind of emotions that is that thing. The original PlayStation is one of the most important consoles of all time. It's definitely far from perfect, but so were all the other consoles of this generation. It was a weird time for gaming. They were going from side-scrolling 2D platformers to diving headfirst into the third dimension. Things weren't going to be perfect, but it paved the way for where we are now. Those ugly human models from 27 years ago were the first steps in giving us these hyper-realistic ones today. Even though the PS1 is kind of a hot mess, that's what's so lovable about it. The PS1 is definitely my most nostalgic console, and I'm sure it's the same for many other people too. So in conclusion,